Well, welcome everyone. Another Wednesday, another Lunch and Learn. Today's topic, healthy and fun food swaps. In preparing today's presentation, you're expecting one thing and sometimes you get another when you're going through this process. And that's going to be kind of what today is. I mean, we're going to talk about how to change some foods that you may currently be eating, but a lot of today is going to be about teaching you how to eat the things that you love, but maybe just eating them in a different way and doing a few things different and watching how you can improve your health just by focusing on habits more than necessarily the food itself. So let's jump on in. First and foremost, most people when they think about food swaps, it's, the healthy versus the unhealthy, or it's the good versus the bad. One of the things that you always hear us talk about at ID Life is there is no good or bad. There are better choices. There's better things that we can choose to consume versus other things. But there is no good and bad foods, because when you talk about bad, then if somebody actually likes that, or somebody actually goes out and eats those things, then all of a sudden does that make them a bad person? Does that mean they made a bad choice? Does that mean they're bad? That bad concept just creates a habit or a feeling of defeat, or that feeling of unease in the person that made that choice. And so there is no good versus bad. The real issue, though, is this. So many people are confused. What is good? What is bad? What is actually healthy? What is unhealthy? What is better for me? What is not as good for me? I mean, if you look at the front of labels, especially in the grocery store these days, there's all kinds of things that say healthy, and that they say light, and they say fat-free, and they say reduced fat. And they have all kinds of certifications from random organizations all over the place. And some of them have a meaning of some sort. Others don't mean anything at all. They're just marketing. The reality is, what today is about is trying to give you some things that you can do, give you some information that you can use so that you don't get bogged down into this debate or into this confusion. Let's start out here. Probably the most treasured and time-honored tradition is grandma teaches mom, mom teaches daughter, daughter teaches daughter, and we pass recipes on in families. And, we have these big events where, people show up for Christmas and Thanksgiving and everything else, and everyone pulls out the old recipes and everyone gets to make food together, and, it's just generational thing. But the problem is, as these recipes have been passed down from generation to generation, something's changed. In fact, if you really look at it, grandma's table looked a lot different than what our table does today. This is grandma's recipe. It has all the fresh fruits and vegetables and the things that she actually cut on a cutting board. But, today, our recipe is all in cans, in jars. Pre-made. It's easier. It's faster. It's something, convenient that we can grab and we can put in. So let's look at something real quick, because if we just look at, just a basic spaghetti recipe. Now, for all my Italian friends out there, no, this is not your grandmother's spaghetti recipe. And I know that. Trust me. I know what we're talking about. This is just a basic recipe to prove a point. If you look at grandma's recipe versus the 2017 recipe, there are two main differences I want you to pay attention to. The first is the tomatoes. See, grandma's recipe actually had real tomatoes. The 2017 recipe substitutes real tomatoes for 4 28-ounce cans of crushed tomatoes. And then, of course, the garlic cloves changed just from 4 cloves over to the 2 tablespoons of the jarred garlic. And then, of course, that thing at the very bottom you need to pay attention to is that 1 tablespoon of sugar, which is going to come into play a little bit later. But both of them have that same tablespoon of sugar in them. But what happens in the garlic alone? See, when we choose real garlic in grandma's recipe, it roughly has 16 calories for this recipe, 4 milligrams of sodium, and no sugar. If we use the jar, though, there's 40 calories, 480 milligrams of sodium, and 4 grams of sugar. So what we have done is we have increased the amount of sodium by 120x, and of course we now all of a sudden have 4 grams of sugar that wasn't there before. This is a small thing, but obviously when you're trying to reduce the sodium content, especially with people with heart disease and things like that, you have to actually look at these things. But when this recipe is what it is and what it calls for, you end up with these types of caloric differences, this type of sodium difference, and this type of sugar difference in this one thing. But what happens when we look at the tomatoes? See, the real tomatoes, it's a pretty healthy thing. Now, you look at 48 grams of sugar and you're like, well, how does real tomato have 48 grams of sugar? Don't forget that a tomato is a fruit, not a vegetable. A lot of people get that confused. But the reality is it is a fruit, so it has naturally occurring sugars in the tomato itself. As a result, there are 48 in there. Now remember, this is for a serving of 4 people. So what this means is this recipe has 12 grams of sugar, or and when you convert that over to teaspoons, so that servings, has 3 servings of sugar for each helping, or each person that's going to be consuming it. 3 is not that bad. The women can have as many as 6 servings a day, men 9, so 3 isn't horrible, especially for a dinner meal. But let's look at the canned tomatoes. When you look at the canned tomatoes, things change dramatically. Because now what you're looking at is an exponential increase in the caloric value. The sodium is absolutely through the roof, and the sugar is unmeasurable. The amount of sugar in here is 171 grams. So when you look side by side, by simply taking Grandma's recipe and taking the 2017 recipe, on the tomatoes alone, what you're looking at is an increase of over almost 700 calories in just the tomatoes. 4,100 additional milligrams of sodium, and the sugar is, more than 3x. It's crazy. Then if we take noodles, let's just look at the noodles real quick. You could always use spaghetti squash. If you've never used spaghetti squash in exchange for noodles, you should pay attention to that, because it really can make a big difference as far as a food swap goes, and really reduce the caloric intake. In fact, when you actually compare side by side, there's kind of a serving. A serving of the regular noodles is 340 calories versus 31. The sodium obviously is higher, and the carbohydrates is just through the roof for the real pasta. But those are little hacks that you can make. That's our first healthy food swap that you can make. And if you've never done spaghetti squash, I can tell you personal experience. It's actually very good. It's like a stringier version of pasta. I know all my Italian friends are going to be sending me emails. Trust me, I know. I spent a lot of time in Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, and I know I'm going to get these wonderful texts about, me and pasta and spaghetti squash. But the reality is, if we're trying to make a healthier lifestyle, if we're trying to make good diet and lifestyle choices, this is something that you could change. So what's the difference per serving? Now, this is not taking into consideration any of the breads, the butters, or the other ingredients in this wonderful spaghetti example that I've given you. If we just change these 3 things, okay, and on the left-hand side is Grandma's recipe with spaghetti squash, and on the right-hand side is our 2017 recipe with the ease and convenience of canned and boxed foods, the caloric value difference is crazy. 250 different calories is the differentiation, but the amount of sodium, look at that. You have 1,250 milligrams more of sodium in our recipe today, and you have an additional 19 grams of sugar. That's almost 5 additional servings of sugar by choosing the convenient boxed and jarred item as opposed to the real thing. We got to take the time to really learn how to cook again. A lot of us, we think we're great cooks, and our kids and our families, love our cooking. But the reason why they love it is because it tastes just as sugary and just as salty as all of their favorite snacks that they're getting in bags, boxes, jars, and cans. We have to get back to traditional cooking. We have to get people to understand what food tastes like again, and we have to be making better choices. So let's look at this. What would happen if you could eliminate 100 calories a day from your diet? That's just 100 calories. Okay, so forget these plans where you're cutting out, 1,500 calories and cutting out 1,000 calories and starving yourself on these starvation diets. Forget all that for a second. What if you just eliminated 100 calories a day? And what does that look like? Well, it could be ketchup. I know, I'm going to get text messages and emails about the ketchup, but the reality is 5 teaspoons of ketchup is 100 calories. Most people, ketchup is part of the food group on every meal that they eat. I know I'm married to one. Love you, sweetie. But the ketchup is something that we could eliminate and save 100 calories. 1 butter portion is 100 calories. That one little butter thing. So, throwing butter on your steak, you don't really think much about it. That's 100 calories. Buttering your bread, there you go. One of the newest fads, especially in the millennial generation and the young kids these days, is their addiction to ranch dressing. One teaspoon of ranch dressing is 145 calories. A piece of cheese. So saying no to cheese on a cheeseburger. You don't really taste it anyway with everything else we put on it. That takes out 113 calories. That glass of orange juice is 136. A 16-ounce sweet tea is 90 calories. Most people buy those in 32-ounce and greater. So that's a simple way to knock out that. And of course, one Coke is 140 calories. So again, easy way to knock out 100 calories. But what would happen if you could just knock out 100 calories a day? Just say no to one of these things that's in your daily regimen. Well, you're going to lose 10 to 12 pounds per year. That's right. That's how it adds up. See, most people, the problem is when they're starting a health journey, they think I have to lose it tomorrow, or a lot of people think I need to lose it yesterday. So they go for the fast, the extreme, the get it quick, fast type thing. They want to see results overnight. The reality is it took us a long time to get to where we are. It's going to take us a while to get to where we want to go. But by making these small little choices, I mean, who wouldn't want to lose 10 to 12 pounds? And who couldn't find an easy way to just cut out that 100 calories a day to get there? That's the difference. That is the simple approach to basically getting you where you want to go. So, our first easy food swap and healthy and fun, just eliminate 100 calories a day. Watch what happens. So, let's look at this one. Which plate has the most food? We've talked about 100 calories. Let's talk about the plate size for a second. The reality is they all have the same. See, as we have grown, and what I do mean grown, I'm talking about the size of the human in America has exponentially grown from the 60s, where our average weights were, in the mid 100s, to today, where the average weight is in the 200s. What has also increased along the way is our plate sizes. See, in the 60s, the average plate was about 8.5 inches and held about 800 calories. Today, the average plate is 12 inches and holds about 1,900 calories. So one of the other easy little food swaps you can make is just reduce your plate size. If you have that 12-inch plate versus a 10-inch plate, that 12-inch plate can hold as many as 900 more calories than the 10-inch plate can. Now, we're here talking about trying to get healthy. We're talking about trying to do easy food swaps. Why are we talking about plate sizes? Well, unfortunately, a lot of us, hey, I'm in this boat too. We all grew up with parents and grandparents and great-grandparents and people that told us all the time that we needed to be members of the Clean Plate Club. You know what I'm talking about. You cannot get up from the table until you've cleaned your plate. Well, a lot of that came from the Great Depression when people were starving and food was hard to come by. And today in America, we have an abundance of everything, but unfortunately this continues to persevere and we still have this issue. And if you ever wondered how prevalent it is in society, well, the issue is 92% of adults eat all of the food placed on their plate. I'm going to let that set in for just a second. 92% of adults, 92% of the people watching this webinar right now are going to clean everything off their plate, no matter what size the plate is. It's a psychological thing. It's something we've been taught. It becomes part of our habits. Remember, habits are our biggest driving forces here. Our brain is driving a lot of what we do, especially when it comes to the food that we eat and the types of foods that we choose. But by simply reducing the plate size, what we're going to do is help ourselves, because guess what? It won't hold as many calories. Again, we're not talking about changing the foods you love or changing the foods that you like. What we're saying is change the size of the plate on which you're putting the food and watch what happens to the caloric value and watch what happens to your waistline as a result. So, best advice, buy a smaller plate. So, eat everything on your plate. What does that lead to? Let's talk about that for a second, because you may be one of these people. You may have been taught this, and your parents were taught this, and your grandparents were taught this, so you may be perpetuating this down to even your children. So let's talk about this for a second. What does it lead to? One, it leads to overeating. This eat everything on your plate, it prevents somebody from stopping when they're full. It prevents people from stopping when they've been satisfied. It basically requires them to overeat. Second thing is it creates the bad eating habits. Because if they have to eat everything on the plate, usually they eat faster because they want to get done. Causes obesity. Direct scientific link to cleaning your plate and being obese. So just know that this is not something you want to perpetuate. This is not what you want to teach people. And of course, it also creates a lifelong struggle with food. Evidenced by the fact that 92% of Americans to this day, or adult Americans, still clean their plate no matter how much is on it. So if you ever want to see this in action, go to any buffet anywhere in the United States and watch what happens. I mean, you take what is typically a plate that would hold a certain amount of food, and all of a sudden it becomes, the Leaning Tower of Pisa as it's, traveling down to the table so that it can be consumed in any numerous different ways. So be cognizant of that. Let's move on to something else. Let's talk about cooking methods. Do cooking methods really make a difference? Well, if we're going to talk about cooking methods, the first thing we have to do is have a base vocabulary. So if we're going to go out to eat, or we're going to cook it ourselves, or we're going to follow a recipe or something else, we need to understand what certain terms mean. So here, you have fried, au gratin, crispy. What does that mean? What do they equal? Well, what it equals is taste amazing. Isn't that, what we think of when we see these things? Just taste great. The reality is, while it may taste great, that's not what we need to understand these mean. What this really means from a health and wellness standpoint is it's cooking methods high in unhealthy fat and calories. We're going to be adding unhealthy fats and calories to our food when we choose these different methods to cook our food. Let's look at these. Steamed, broiled, baked, grilled, poached, roasted. What does that mean? What do we see there? Well, that means in other words, not a lot of excitement. You're not really, super excited. Your taste buds aren't exploding in your mouth before you taste it. This is just one of those things that doesn't have a lot of, pomp and circumstance to it. But the real meaning is they're healthier methods that don't add unhealthy fats and unwanted calories. So we need to look at these different methods and make sure we understand them, because if we learn how to cook our favorite meals this way as opposed to the other, then obviously we're reducing the caloric intake and the unwanted fats, especially the saturated fats that are coming in the cooking method. And then some of the other things you need to be watching out for: the pickled, the cocktail sauce, smoked, broth, or au jus, and then soy and teriyaki sauces, because those are high sodium foods. Be very, very careful when you're ordering things like this, especially at restaurants. Or when you're buying things in the store, if they have these types of explainers to them, or if this is the cooking method recommended in a recipe, just know that there's going to be a high amount of sodium in that food, especially if you're trying to watch your sodium. So does it really make a difference? Does cooking method make that big of a difference in what we're doing? Well, here's a basic chicken breast. If we take that chicken breast and we grill it, it's 231 calories. If we throw it in, a stew, it becomes 258 calories. Remember, the chicken breast is absorbing the stuff that is being cooked with, and the way that it's being cooked. So even in grilled, if you throw a bunch of barbecue sauce on it and other things, obviously that caloric value is going to go up. The roasted is 276 calories, and then of course our fried friend is 322 calories. So having the same chicken breast, the same exact thing, but cooking it in different ways can make more than a 90 calorie difference. That's right. So the difference between grilled and fried can be as much or more than 90 calories per chicken breast, simply because of the cooking method that we chose. So one of the easy things to swap out when we're trying to make healthy choices is the cooking method that we're utilizing, because by choosing a healthier cooking method, we can still have the food that we like, but we're not adding the unwanted calories, but more importantly, the unhealthy fats along with the food. What's your favorite cut of beef? Now, I'm not intending this for people that are, vegetarians or vegans or anything else. What this is to make a point. We need to understand when we're ordering any type of, animal protein, where it's coming from. I always love it when I go into the grocery store and people are looking for meats and they're looking at, chuck and rib and round, and they don't understand where it comes from, especially, the flank and the shanks and things like that, where they don't understand where all of that meat is coming from the animal, but yet, they're saying, yeah, it's on sale, so this is the one I'm going to get. If they had a basic education with regard to where that cut was coming from, it might change their mind on what it is they're willing to pay for, more importantly, what they're willing to consume. But let's look at it a little bit differently. As opposed to where on the animal it's coming from, let's look at the caloric values. Because see, a simple 3-ounce serving, just 3 ounces, if you just look at the beef side of things, the rib roast large end at the very top is 300 calories. But if you get the round top, round steak broiled at the bottom, what ends up happening, so instead of roasted, we're going to broil it, it's 170 calories. It's a 130 calorie difference. And of course, if you look at all the others, just like the chicken, if you eat the wing, it's 240 calories roasted. But if you eat the breast roasted, it's 170 calories. You can literally save 70 calories right there simply by choosing the breast over the wing. There's little bitty things, but we need to become better eaters or better consumers and better understanders of what we're consuming. Because if you look closer to the chicken as an example, the wing roasted is 240 calories, but it's also 16 grams of fat and 23 grams of protein. The breast roasted at the bottom is only 170 calories. It's 7 grams of fat, less than half, and it has more protein. It has 25 grams of protein. And that's true with most of the things. If you look down the list and you're choosing the better cuts of meat or the better parts of the bird or the animal, you're going to get more protein, less fat, and lower calories. Just need to become a better educated consumer of what it is that you're eating. And for all my vegans and vegetarian friends of the world, this is for you. Most people, when they think protein, they think steak, they think some type of animal protein. But the reality is, if you look at 100 grams of spirulina versus steak, the spirulina has twice as much protein in it. From an iron standpoint, it's not even a match. Calcium, it's not even a match. And of course, the fat is less than half. There are a lot of great plant-based proteins out there. Don't think when you hear the word "I got to get my protein," don't think just animal protein. There are plants and other sources of protein that you need to become familiar with because they can be great sources of high fiber protein that are also very rich in different vitamins and minerals. So do you trust your instincts? All right. So we've talked about some interesting food swaps. We've talked about some different aspects of things that we can do, from cooking methods to other things. But what about your instincts? Do you trust those? What do I mean by that? Well, the hypothalamus is a very strong portion of your brain. And if you don't understand what it is it creates a dopamine response. But in essence, it's our pleasure center. It's what happens when we see something that we like from a food standpoint, or we hear a potato chip crunch from across the room, and all of a sudden our mouth starts to salivate, and we have that tempting craving. Or you're driving down the road and you smell your favorite fast food place, and all of a sudden you're in the drive-in line, but you're not even hungry yet. You're also, already starting to consume that fast food meal. The reality is, this is a very, very powerful thing. And we don't have the ability to overcome it on most cases. I mean, now on most cases, you can try with willpower to stave off your favorite things for the longest period of time, but eventually you're going to give in. The hypothalamus is that strong. But the biggest reason why I wanted to show you this and talk to you was because the brain does not differentiate between hunger and thirst. See, so sometimes when you think you're hungry, what you really are is thirsty. And in fact, if you would simply just drink a glass of water and wait about 10 minutes, if the hunger goes away, guess what? You weren't really hungry, you were actually thirsty. Most people, what they're going to do is they're going to grab food because they get the wrong signal because the brain doesn't differentiate. So what they end up doing is eating. Well, the body doesn't care. The body will pull moisture from the food that you're consuming until it's been, satisfied. The problem is, if we're eating processed foods or fast foods, they have very low water content in those foods. So as a result, we start eating a lot of it in order to get the thirst taken care of or satiated. Whereas had we just drank the water, we could have avoided that in the first place. So, great little swap, if you will, when you're getting ready to eat, is have yourself a nice glass of water and watch how fewer calories you actually consume as a result. So here's a question for you. What's the most important thing needed for digestion of food? Now, this is probably the greatest swap I can probably give you in this presentation. Now, I've teed this up. What could it be? What could it possibly be? What is the greatest thing that you need? What is the most important thing for digestion of your food? It's oxygen. It's oxygen. You have to breathe for your body to digest the food that you are consuming. Now, why do I have a picture of a shovel and a picture of a fork? Well, because the thing on the left is what has been designed for us to use as for our food. The thing on the right is designed to dig holes, but most of us treat the shovel the same way that we treat the fork when it comes to eating. And we are shoveling it in our mouth without taking a single breath and seeing how fast we can eat. Most people are consuming their breakfast, lunch, and dinner in under 10 minutes. I mean, it's how fast can I get as much in my mouth as possible so I can move on back with my day and get something done. We've got to slow down. In fact, if you do, people that spend 20 minutes or more eating a meal consume 32% fewer calories on average. 32% fewer calories simply by doing this, having a conversation. What does that mean? That means turn off the television, put the phone down, and actually talk to the person that you're having a meal with. You ever notice that when you go to a dinner party or you're with a lot of friends and the dinner comes and you're still starting that conversation, you look down halfway through the meal and half your food is still there, but you're full? But when you go out and eat by yourself or with your spouse or with the family, not only have you eaten all that, but you've also eaten all the chips and the hot sauce and the bread and the butter and everything else around you. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we just don't simply take the time to have a conversation. We don't take in the oxygen that the body needs in order to digest the food so that it can send the signal to the brain to let us know we're full. So why is this the case? Why does this work? Well, it's simple. It takes roughly 20 minutes for the brain to receive the signal from the stomach that you're satisfied. If you are eating your meal in under 10 minutes, which is the average in this country, the brain is not even getting the signal that you're full until you've, for the most part, already overeaten. And you have that feeling of, uncomfort. And, you have, as my son would say, getting ready to birth the food baby. I mean, it's, you basically overeaten yourself into a sickness or to dissatisfaction. That's what happens to us every single day. So stop, slow down, take some time, and breathe. In other words, put the fork down between bites. You'd be amazed what happens and how much you actually consume if you simply took a couple of breaths between each bite of your meal. So what have we learned? What have we learned so far? Well, we've learned that our brain is a very powerful tool that we can't overcome, but most importantly, it doesn't differentiate between hunger and thirst, so we need to make sure that we're very cognizant of that. The source of the food in which we're preparing our meal is critical to determining and gauging the caloric, fat, and other values of the meal that we're preparing. That a fork is a fork and a shovel is a shovel, and we should not treat one as for the other. We have to take our time. Cooking method is critical in understanding how we're adding calories and how we're adding unnecessary saturated fats to our meal. Water is uber critical. In fact, what I love about, when I start talking about water to most people, they say, well, I just don't like the taste of water. And I was like, no, water has no taste, which is why you don't like it. It's a common misnomer, but the reality is this. We need to drink more water. Our bodies were designed to consume water, so let's consume water. But most importantly, let's consume some water before our meals. Cutting out 100 calories can make a huge difference in our waistline. 10 to 12 pounds. Who wouldn't want that? Plate size makes a large difference in the amount of calories that we consume, especially when 92% of us are going to clean that plate, no matter what the size of it is. So a smaller plate is better. And of course, knowing where the meat or the poultry or the protein is coming from is critical to understanding the caloric value, nutritional value, and fat content of what it is we're consuming. So understand where the meat is and what it means from the value standpoint that we're actually getting from what it is we're consuming. So a lot of good information there. But, you probably jumped on here saying, okay, Bennett, but I wanted some food swaps. I wanted some things that I could actually switch out that I'm currently doing, that I can reduce the calorie value, increase the nutrient value, and just make some easy little swaps. So got some of that here for you. We're going to go through this one really kind of quickly, but the idea behind it is to give you some ideas. But I can tell you this. If you really want to make these changes, a simple Google search can give you tens of thousands of different food swaps that you can make. Tens of thousands. I mean, take the time to learn. Try things. Yes, you may not like it, but guess what? You tried it. Move on to the next thing. See what happens. Have some fun with this. So let's jump in. Potato chips versus snap pea crisps. Doesn't sound like, a big difference. I mean, it has that same crunch and everything else, but you save a simple 42 calories by simply doing that, and the snap peas have more fiber in it. So, that's an easy little swap that you can do. What about this one? Half a cup of chocolate ice cream versus a half a cup of banana ice cream. What do? You freeze the banana, you add cocoa powder to the banana, put it in a food processor, and then freeze it and watch what happens. You increase the fiber, the phytochemicals, as well as saving yourself 45 calories for the same serving. Try it out. See if you like it. It might amaze you on the benefits that you're getting from it. So you get to take care of that sweet tooth issue that you have, but at the same time, you're reducing 45 calories from your diet in the process. What if you have a recipe that's asking for breadcrumbs? Well, you can take, old-fashioned oats. That's going to save you 70 calories by making that change. And not only that, it's going to increase the fiber and the B vitamins as well. So easy way of making a swap. If you have like a meatloaf recipe or a veggie burger recipe or something like that, this is a simple little swap to save some calories there. This is a favorite. Switch out the sour cream for the low-fat Greek yogurt. You won't be able to taste the difference. It will taste just as good, but it's going to save you 80 calories. Simple little swap there. This is a good one. If you love mayonnaise on your sandwich, try hummus. Hummus is going to have more heart-healthy fats, fiber, and it's going to save you 120 calories. That's the difference in those 2 tablespoons. 120 calories. Hey, try it. See what happens. You might actually find something that you like, and you can really save some calories in the process. One of the other things that you have, we showed you other spaghetti squash, but you can also use zucchini noodles instead of pasta. That's going to save you almost 200 calories per serving. So, if you've never tried it before, get you a zucchini spiraler and try it out. I actually have one at the house. It actually was recommended to me by a good friend who's a nutritionist, and she said try it out, and we did, and absolutely love it. So, try it yourself, see what happens. Here's a good one for all you bakers out in the world. Instead of the stick of butter that has 810 calories, yes, a stick of butter has 810 calories, if you didn't know that. You can take half the stick of butter and take a 1/4 cup of mashed avocado and save yourself 305 calories in that recipe. Just something to try, but you'd be amazed at the flavor and the taste that you get as a result. Here's another favorite. If something calls for 1/2 cup of canola oil, that's 960 calories in that 1/2 cup of oil, by the way, if you didn't know that. You can take the 1/4 cup of oil and then have a 1/4 cup of applesauce and save yourself 455 calories. That's right, 455 calories. Great substitution when you're baking things. But you should really try this out and watch how not only are baked goods just as good as they have been before, but now all of a sudden you've made them healthier in the process. Let's talk about this one. This is one of my favorites. If you are a purveyor of Starbucks or things of that nature, and you see people ordering the frappuccinos and the frozen drinks with whipped cream and things like that, one of those 16-ounce drinks, and I'll be honest, most of the ones I've seen are much higher than the 400 calories, but they have over 13 teaspoons of sugar. That's 13 servings of sugar in one of those drinks. If you would just take iced coffee, a tablespoon of half and half, and 2 teaspoons of sugar, that's right, adding 2 teaspoons of sugar, what you end up with is only 55 calories and 2 teaspoons of sugar, which is less than that's 2 servings. But you save yourself 345 calories by making that one switch. 345 calories and 13 teaspoons of sugar. It's crazy. What about sweet tea drinkers? We live in the South here. Idealife is in Texas, and sweet tea is a big thing. You can order your 16-ounce sweet tea. Like I said, most people are drinking 32s and 45s and 50s and Bubba mug jugs. And no, I'm not making that up for people in the Northeast. It actually is a real thing here. But the caloric value is pretty high, and the teaspoons of sugar obviously is super high. By simply taking and doing what we call a half and half, or taking 4 ounces of sweet tea and 12 ounces of unsweet tea, it's going to taste relatively the same, but you're going to save yourself 112 calories and 6 teaspoons of sugar simply by making that one little switch, that one little food hack. So keep that in mind. That's a simple little thing that you can do. For my margarita lovers out there, I wouldn't leave you behind. You can take your 8-ounce margarita if that's what you want, 290 calories and 9 teaspoons of sugar, or you can order a margarita martini, save yourself 50 calories, but more importantly, save yourself 7 teaspoons or 7 servings of sugar simply by making it a margarita martini as opposed to a frozen margarita. So again, simple little switch to save yourself some time and money. All of the Wednesday Lunch and Learns that we do are all centered around a central concept. And I hope today's process of, simple swaps that you can make has been beneficial to you, and you've learned some things from it. But it's all congruent with the teaching that we have here at Idealife, which is healthy living is all about diet, lifestyle, and nutrition. Your diet and lifestyle choices are going to create your nutritional gap, whatever that is. So as you make better diet choices, as you make better lifestyle choices, your nutritional gap will shrink. Now, obviously, we're going to have a nutritional gap in this country simply because the food supply doesn't allow us not to. But the idea behind everything that we're doing here, all of the teaching that we do, the whole reason why we have these lunch and learns is to teach you how to improve the diet and lifestyle so you need less of the nutritional side of things. It's a novel concept, but it's about what IDLife is. It's the mission of IDLife. And more importantly, it's what we stand for. We're all about getting people healthy. And what that is about is teaching them what's causing the nutritional gaps that they have and giving the body what it needs, when it needs it, and nothing that it doesn't, so it can do exactly what it was designed to do, which is take care of itself. So hopefully today has been beneficial and you've learned something that maybe you didn't know.